Brachos, Daf Yudalad through Chaf. The Gemara begins Daf Yudalad discussing the Halachos we had on Daf Yud Gimel in the Mishnah, beginning of the second parak, about interrupting during the Brachos of Kriya Shema and Kriya Shema itself, Pnei Kavod, Pnei Yira, for someone you have to have respect for or you have to have fear for. We paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Be'emtza, in middle of a paragraph, Shoel Pnei Yira, you can ask someone, Shalom, someone Yira, someone who you have to have fear for, and Meshiv, you can answer if someone says Shalom to you, Pnei Kavod. Ubeprakim, between paragraphs, Shalom Pnei Kavod, you can answer, you can even ask someone who you have to have respect for, Umeshiv Shalom Adam, you can answer for anyone. The Mishnah Berurah brings from the poskim that this idea of kavod is someone who, if you don't answer him, if you don't talk to him, it'll cause bad feeling, animosity. The minhag today, he says, is we don't do that. People don't talk like that in shul. They don't expect it, he says. So today, this halacha basically does not apply. Chalila, he says, chas v'shalom, to be shoel or meshiv, even for Torah, not even bein haprakim, not even during Sukkot Zimra. So we don't really apply this halacha b'zman hazeh. Similarly, Pnei Yira, post can bring even aviv or rabba muvhak, people who you're supposed to have yira for, ishim avav tiro, that today it's not expected that you're going to answer, interrupt davening, so we don't have these halachas, we don't apply these halachas to Pnei Yira or Pnei Kavod. There are, however, some applications these halachas have. First of all, the Mishnah Berurah brings that hefsid mammon, worried about losing money, is considered the same level of Pnei Hayira. So if a person's in a situation where he has to answer to avoid losing money, that has the heter, that has the guidelines of Pnei Hayira. Furthermore, the post can say that answering Kaddish and Kedusha and certain other things is considered also something that you can answer for even in the middle of a pasuk. We paskin that for Kaddish, which means Yehesh Me Rabbah until Almaya, not Yisbarach, and the Amen after Damiran Ba'alma, Vimru Amen, that's Kaddish, that has a special stringency of Kaddish. You can answer even in the middle of a pasuk, but not the Amen after Tiskabel, Yehesh Lo Marabah, Nasa Shalom, those are only minhag. Kedusha means Kadosh Kadosh, and Baruch Kvod Hashem Yim Kamo, that's Iker Kedusha, not Yimloch, certainly not Nekadesh. Those you can answer even in the middle of a pasuk. Baruchu, answering Baruchu, Modim, meaning just the words Modim Anachnu Lach, not the whole Modim Draban, and all those things are so important you can answer even Be'emtza, even in the middle of a pasuk. And the Amen of Hakel HaKadosh and Shema Tefillah, not the other Amens, all these are even in the middle of a pasuk. These things are important enough you can answer in the middle of a pasuk. The post can say, if you can be posek for kavod of basar v'dam, certainly for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you have to interrupt for these things in the middle of a pasuk, some say you should dafka do it only in a case where it's solik and yana, where there's an end of a thought, the end of an inyan. Others disagree. Mishnah Berurah says that if you're answering Kaddish and Kedushin, if you wait till the end of the inyan, the end of the clause, or the end of the concept, you're going to miss it. You can interrupt the middle of the pasuk, but then you should begin from the beginning of that pasuk. In the middle of the pasuk of Shema Yisrael, or the phrase of Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso, or even between those two, you cannot answer anything at all. Mishnah Berurah says it's mashma, even Kaddish and Kedusha, you shouldn't answer in those points. Tarachi and Gadol L'maisa, he's not sure what you should do halacha l'maisa. The Gemara later on Daf Yudal, the Gemara talks about te'ima. It says you don't need a bracha for te'ima, and also te'ima is not really eating, so on a tanis you can fast. On a tanis you can do te'ima, you can taste since you're not really eating. Up till the Gemara says up till a revius. There are two opinions in the Rishonim. Some Rishonim say that this whole discussion is if you swallow it, but if you're spitting it out, you can go even more than a revius. As long as you're not swallowing, you can eat even more than a revius. Drink. Mishnah Berurah says the application might be if someone is pre-chewing food for a child, he can chew as much as he needs, as much as the child needs, even more than a revius. Some say, on the contrary, that if you're swallowing it, you need a bracha even for a small amount. But again, if you're polate, then you never need a bracha even for a large amount. And revius then is only relevant for a fast state. The halacha is, the Ramah says, Safik brachas lahakel. The post can say, Safik brachas lahakel, that even if you're swallowing, you should not make a bracha, but it's better to avoid that by making sure that if you need to swallow, if you're going to swallow, then have in mind that you want to actually eat it, and then you'll definitely make a bracha. For cooked food, not for liquid, the cooked food, the share is kazayis. The Gemara says that it is a very bad thing to give shalom, to wish shalom to your friend before davening. It's like you built a bama. Tosfos says, we pass and it's only mashkim lepischo, it's only if you go out of your way to present yourself at his door, then that's when it's so terrible. But pago bakra, you meet him in the street, you meet him in shul, that's okay, you can say shalom. Also, the post can say, the Shulchan Aruch says, that's only shalom, which is shem shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not appropriate to use the shem shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu to greet somebody else. Safra de Marei Tov, good morning, is okay. But even that is only if you have to go, if you need to go, then you can say it's not for Tamar Tav, even if you go to his house, but you shouldn't deliberately make social calls for no reason before davening Shachris. Similar halacha, the Gemara says you're not allowed to do chafatzav, aslo adam lasses chafatzav, you can't engage in your affairs before davening. Some say, the Ramah brings, some say that after you've said some of the brachos, even before Baruch Sha'amar, it's okay, but tov l'hachrim bazeh, you should not be lenient about this. The Gemara says, ben elokechem te'emes v'yatziv lo yafsik, there's a debate about it, but we say, ben elokechem le'emes v'yatziv is considered be'emtza perik, you should not be mafsik at all. The Gemara brings another halacha that's saying Kriya Shema without tefillin is also a bad thing to do. One of the things the Gemara says is made a sheker b'atzmo, you're bearing false witness. Kriya Shema talks about tefillin, you're not wearing tefillin. Mishnah Berurah brings that that's only a person who deliberately chooses not to wear tefillin, he's lazy, he doesn't want to put on his tefillin. Someone who doesn't have tefillin, or he can't put on tefillin right now, he's going to be able to put on tefillin later, certainly he shouldn't miss man Kriya Shema because of his current inability to put on tefillin. The Gemara talks about washing the Tilas Yadayim on Daf Tesvav. The Gemara says if you don't have water, you can use afar, dirt, srar, pebbles, kismis, you can use various things that are midi demanaki, other things that clean your hands. Post can bring also yishafshef v'talas yavesh, you can rub yourself with a dry garment. That's also midi demanaki. These things, the Shulchan Aruch says, work for davening. You have to wash your hands before davening. These things work, but not for ruach ra. Ruach ra apparently only leaves the hands with water. If a person does have water, he really needs to wash his hands. He shouldn't rely on midi demanaki. Not just chakras, even for mincha and marav, a person really should use water. Even if he doesn't know his hands are dirty, there is a mitzvah to wash your hands for all the tefillas. If a person has no water, then Mishnah Berurah says, yesh omrim, some say you can rely on midi demanaki for all the tefillas. The Shulchan Aruch brings various halachos. The Gemara talks about how far you have to go, about traveling to get water. The Gemara brings different shiurim. So we say if it's on your way in front of you, and you're going that way anyway, it's ad parsa, 4 mil. If it's out of your way, if it's behind you, or if you're in your house, you're not traveling anywhere, then the share is a mil. Mishnah Berurah brings that the Shulchan Aruch says this is all if you know that your hands are dirty. Stam yadayim, if you don't know anything, you just wash your hands hours ago, you don't know what happened since then you don't have to travel, so you still should wash, but you don't have to travel so far to get water. Poskim debate many of these halachos, including this one, whether these shiurim of 4 mil, traveling 4 mil, traveling 1 mil, we often say a mil, there are different shitas, we often say a mil is about 18 minutes. The question is whether these shiurim are distance or the shiurim are time. If a person's driving or traveling by some means which is faster than walking, do we keep it a fixed 72 minutes and 18 minutes, or does it depend on the actual distance? Debate in the poskim. If you're going to miss davening, then you should rely on midi demanaki. You shouldn't miss man tefillah for looking for water. We have another halacha. The Mishnah says brings different tanaim. We have machlokas about if you're karav lo shmiel aznav and karav lo diktik bas yoseh. You didn't speak the words and letters precisely, or you didn't hear what you said. So regarding diktik bas yoseh, it's a mitzvah to do it. Mishnah Berurah says yizar ma'od to do it, but b'diavad, if it's lo diktik, then you are still yotze. Mishnah Berurah explains it doesn't mean if you said the words completely wrong. That means the Gemara, we're going to see later in the Gemara brings various examples of not running words together or not saying things in ways that are slightly inaccurate. That b'diavad we say yotze, although l'chatchila yizar ma'od to get it right. About the other machlokas, about lashmiel azno, about speaking in an audible voice that you can actually hear what you say. So we paskin, there's a long sugya about Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, different shitas. We paskin that lachatchila, you have to hear what you say. You have to say it loud enough that you can hear. Some say that's daraisa, some say that's drabanan at least, but certainly lachatchila you have to hear what you say. But the eved, your yotze, as long as you say it verbally. If you just think it, if you don't even utter the words at all, then you are not yotze. This is the halacha of other mitzvahs too, based on the Gemara, according to almost all poskim. Bir halacha says a shar mitzvahs also. Even if lo ishmiel aznav, you couldn't hear what you said, you are still yotze b'diavad. The Gemara on the bottom of the Amud Beis gives examples of running words together. The Gemara gives various specific examples. Al levavecha, that running the two lamens together. Al levavchem, the two lamens, and al levavchem. B'chal levavcha, b'chal levavchem. Esav b'sadcha, va'avadetem me'era, hakanaf psil, eschem me'eretz. Various examples. The Rif has other examples. The Gemara's examples are all where the ending consonant of one word and the beginning consonant of the next word are the same. The Rif has other examples where there's a problem with v'chara'af. If it ends in an open vowel and the next word begins in a consonant, you could read it v'charaf. Other examples like that ris semoso, zachar temes, vasi semes. And also, the Zayin of Tizkaru, you should be careful to read it Tizkaru and not Tizkaru, because Tizkaru could mean that you're hired, you're doing it for schar, and we should do mitzvahs not on Nasa Kaval Pras. It's interesting they give that reason, the Rishonim, that it's a mistake in the theology. All the other ones are just inaccurate. This one they single out is actually a misleading and theologically problematic implication. Daf Zayin, the Gemara talks about workers or the Malabayas, the employer himself. If they're up in the tree, they're up somewhere, can they daven, can they say Kriya Shema when they're up there? So we paskin as follows, that if a person is saying Kriya Shema and he's busy working, first of all, you should stop working because you shouldn't be kikari arai. You shouldn't be like someone who's reading in a half-baked way. So you should stop your work to say Kriya Shema. If you're actually up in a tree or on top of a wall, on top of some scaffold, so it says the umnim and the balabayas who are up there, the artisans themselves as well as their employer, they can read Kriya Shema up there, they don't have to descend. However, when it comes to tefillah, then it's more complicated. Then it depends. The umnim, the workers themselves, they're allowed to daven if they're in a zayis or a teina, an olive or a fig tree, but not if they're in other kinds of trees. What's the difference? Rashi seems to explain that the zayis and teina have broader branches and it's more stable, so you're not as distracted. Other trees, you're less stable and you're more distracted. The Rambam says that the olive trees and the fig trees, because they have broad leaves, the Shulchan Aruch, Ben Yonah say the Shulchan Aruch says this, because they have broader leaves, broader branches, it's more of a tircha, it's harder to get down, you'll waste more time from the work of the balabayas, so they were more lenient. To other trees, it's much easier to clamber up and clamber down, apparently, so they told him to go down. These are all the umnim. The umnim have the special dispensation, at least for the zayis and the teina, but the balabayas himself, he's not meshubah to anybody else, he doesn't owe anybody else any financial obligation, so he should go down even from the zayis and the teina. He's not meshubah to anybody else. Normally you don't daven up in a tree. We know there are two possible reasons. There's the reason of gavos, that you shouldn't be high up when you daven. There's the reason of distractions. So again, Lamaisa, we're makil in the fig tree and the olive tree for the workers. We're not makil for the balabayas, and other trees. Everyone is supposed to go down. The Mishnah on Tezayin and Beis, the Mishnah says that Rabbi Gamliel, various things Rabbi Gamliel did. Previously, we talked about Kriya Shema, what he did about saying Kriya Shema when he got married. Here we talk about Rachatz Laila Harishon. He bathed the first night Shemesa Ishto. He was an Avel, an Onain. He was, and normally they're prohibited to bathe. Certainly an Avel, prohibited to bathe. Rabbi Gamliel did so. The Talmidim asked him, "What is that? You told us Avel Aser Lerchot," and he said, "I'm not a regular person. I am an istinus. I'm someone who's very sensitive, I really need it, and for me, it's not tolerable." So the Gemara explains that if you would say that it's deraisa, then there wouldn't be such a distinction. Or Gamliel says, "Aminus Laila Drabanan," it's only rabbinic, and therefore Makom Istinus Lo Gazer Barabanan. For someone who's an istinus, for someone who really needs it, they weren't gozer. Tosas gives other examples, not just istinus, people who have various skin conditions or various cases where something's hurting them or bothering them. It's not for tainug, it's not for pleasure. Various cases of blisters and other types of things that bother him. Person is allowed to be lenient on bathing, on using sicha, using oil. Similarly for Yom Kippur, we find the same distinctions. I heard Rav Aryeh Leibowitz in his daf, he quotes Rosh Shechter as saying that today we're all considered istinusim with regard to bathing. Earlier posts can just say if you're an istinus or if you're dirty, but today people say we're used to showering, we shower regularly. Today we're all istinusim, and Rav Shechter is mekil for an ordinary person to bathe during Avelos because we all have the status of istinus. The Gemara in Daf Yud Zayin, the Gemara continues from Daf Tez Zayin. The Gemara in Tez Zayin and Yud Zayin talk about various types of additions that the various Amoraim of the Talmud would add to their davening. Some of them we say in different contexts. The one that we say daily is the one of Marbrei Dravina. When he would finish davening, he would add, after the standard Shemon Esrei, they would add various things. He would add Elokai Nitzar L'Shni Meira, that the standard nusach that we say after the last bracha, we say Elokai Nitzar, the paragraph of Tachnunim of requests from Hashem that we call Elokai Nitzar. Most of it is the same as we say today, with one notable exception. The Gemara does not have Asay Laman Shemecha, Asay Laman Yiminecha, Asay Laman Tarasecha, Asay Laman Kishasecha. That comes from a midrash. The Torah brings that b'shem Haggadah, b'shem a midrash. Anyone who says those things, who's Zoris to say those four things, Zochem L'Kal Pnei Shechina. Otherwise, ours is pretty much the same as the Gemara. The Gemara says that Marbrei Dravina would end with the Yula Ratzon. After the L'Kai Nitzar, he would say Yula Ratzon. The Mishnah Berurah, the Poskim, the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, the Rishonim bring various opinions about whether Yula Ratzon should be said, as the Gemara seems to imply, after L'Kai Nitzar. Some say before Elokai Nitzar. The Ramah says the minhag was after Elokai Nitzar. The Mishnah Berurah brings from Achronim that you should ideally, one says Yulur Ratzon twice, once before, beginning Elokai Nitzar or other Taknunim, and once after. Some of the other Nischos in the Gemara appear in various other tefillos that we say. One of them, the Gemara says, Rosh Hashanah, when he had a tanis, when he practiced a fast, then after davening he would say, Ribon Halamim, he said to Hashem, in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, a person would bring a carbon. Today we don't have karbanos, so the chelim and the dam, my fat and my blood that I lost when I fasted, should be in place of a carbon. Shulchan Aruch actually brings that after Tfilas Mincha on a tanis, after Elokai Nitzar, you should say, Ribon Kol Halamim, you should say this nusach. I don't know if that is the contemporary practice today, but the Shulchan Aruch says it, and the Mishnah Berurah has no comment. The third parak begins on Daf Yud Zayin. The Gemara discusses more laws of Avelos and Aninus. Tosfos brings actually Machlokes, whether this parak goes next or not, but we have this parak as next. More about the laws of Avelos and Aninus. It says that Misha Mesa Muta Lafanav, someone whose mace is not yet buried. He's an Odain, he's potter from Kriya Shema, from davening, from Tefillah, from Tefillin, all the mitzvahs in the Torah. Rashi says you're exempt, you don't have to be Mavarich. Tosfos says, and Rashi seems to imply that you could if you want, you just don't have to. Tosfos says you actually are not allowed to daven. You're not allowed to do all these things. Yerushalmi brings two reasons, either because of Kvod Shel Mace, if not respectful to the mace, if he's still not buried and it's your responsibility, Misha Meso, it's your responsibility, you shouldn't do these mitzvahs, or because someone has to take care of the mace, and you can't do it if you're busy with mitzvahs. The Shulchan Aruch paskins that you should not be machmer, like this Yerushalmi, that you should not do it. However, he says, if you have someone to take care of the mace, the Chaver Kaddish is doing it, you're not doing it yourself, and somebody wants to be machmer, then ein mochen biyado, we don't object, we don't protest. Mishnah Berurah explains, really the Shulchan Aruch says you shouldn't do it anyway, because of the other reason of the Yerushalmi, that it's not covered for the mace, so really a person shouldn't do it either way. But if a person wants to do it, and if someone taking care of the mace, then at least we say ein mochen, there's yeshalmi lismoch, there's enough basis for him to do it. It's potter from Kriya Shema, from Tefillah, from Tefillin, and also from all other brachos the post can bring, even brachos anenin, you don't make brachos on food, and if you eat bread, you don't make hamotzi, but the Mishnah Berurah says you still have to wash until it's yadayim, but you don't make the bracha until it's yadayim. Mishnah Berurah brings that from the Birkei Yosef. Elsewhere, Mishnah Berurah says that some achronim say you're potter from the mitzvah until it's yadayim also, but you certainly don't make the brachos. Daf Yud Ches, the Gemara talks about the idea of loeg l'rosh. It's a pasuk. The pasuk says loeg l'rosh cheref oseyu. That it makes the deceased feel bad if you do mitzvahs that he can't do. Brisa says you shouldn't walk in a cemetery wearing tefillin, carrying a sefer Torah, v'karei, reading Torah. That's loeg l'rosh. The Gemara says it's only within 4 amos of the graves. There's machlokes. The Mishnah Berurah discusses there's machlokes whether inside a cemetery, you're inside the general grouping of the graves, inside the fence, but you're not actually within 4 amos of any one grave. Some say that since you're inside the cemetery, that's still loeg l'rosh. Others say if you're not within 4 amos of an actual grave, that's okay. The Bir Halacha's conclusion is, he says that yesh lahachmer, if you're within the group of graves itself, if they're at the edge of the cemetery, even though that land is still designated for the cemetery, you're outside the group of graves. Then he says, Medina, you don't have to be machmer if you're 4 amos away from the nearest grave, but still, it's better not to do that. Better, you might come too close to a grave. Better to avoid that as well. There's machlokas in the achronim, a shayla in the achronim, whether if you're in a room with a mace, the room is large, but you're more than 4 amos away, but there is a mace in the room, does loeg l'rosh apply? Some poskim say the entire room is a problem. Other poskim are lenient and say it's only 4 amos. It's only 4 amos itself. The poskim also say, Mishnah Berurah brings, you shouldn't say Kaddish or Divrei Kedusha within 4 amos of a mace because of loeg l'rosh. The Gesher Chaim says that we paskin like the Mavar Yabuk. He says that we do say davening and Kaddish near a grave. He says because, as we saw earlier in the Masechta, Dvarav Shel Mace, Torah, things which are for the benefit of the mace, are mutter, and it's not loeg l'rosh, and he can say that even within 4 amos of the mace itself. That's the minhag, he says. Contemporary achronim discuss tefillah haderech. If you're in a hearse and the hearse is traveling somewhere, you're in the same hearse as the mace, can you say tefillah haderech? Some say that it's for the benefit of the mace also. The trip should be a safe trip. Others say you shouldn't. It's loeg l'rosh. You shouldn't do that either. Tefillah by kivrei tzadikim, kevarachel, and others. If you just say tachnunim, the early poskim seem to say that saying tehillim and tachnunim is fine near a mace. If you're actually going to daven shachris at kevarachel or something, they bring from a shul salant. He wouldn't do that some people did, some people didn't. Different poskim did different things, but kevarachel or meir balanes, but that's also a problem. The Gemara goes on and talks, potentially a problem. The Gemara talks about tzitzis in the basic varas. Tzitzis, the Gemara says, it depends whether the tzitzis are dragging on the graves. If you raise the tzitzis, it's okay. If they're dragging on the graves, it is not okay. However, the Shulchan Aruch brings, B'Shem Rishonim, that's only in the time of Chazal, where tzitzis was a normal beggar that people wore on their normal clothes. Then, if as long as they're not dragging on the graves, it's not you're not flaunting it in front of the mace as much, so that's okay. But today, the entire tzitzis is for mitzvah purposes. We don't wear that. The whole beged is put on, the whole daled kanfos or talis gadol that we wear is all for a mitzvah purpose, and therefore, even if they're not dragging on the mace, it is a problem, unless the tzitzis are covered. You tuck your tzitzis in, or if the coat is long enough to cover all the tzitzis, that's okay. But halach l'maisa, we paskin that even if the tzitzis are not dragging on the graves, it still is loeg l'rush. The Gemara in Daf Yutes, the Gemara talks about we don't begin hotzas a mace. We don't begin taking out a mace to bury him if it's near Zman Kriya Shema. Once you started, you don't stop. The Gemara says that Rav Yosef, when his funeral, they took him out in near Zman Kriya Shema. The Gemara says Adam Chashav Shiny, someone as extraordinary, as special as Rav Yosef, this rule is waived. Mishabura says that B'zman Hazeh, we don't do this because B'zman Hazeh, we don't have anyone that chashuv. All over halacha, we have different standards for chashuv. In this context, we assume we don't have anybody who's chashuv enough to apply this halacha. On Daf Yutesim and Beis, the Gemara brings the sugya of Ein Chachma Vein Tfun Vein Tzil Neged Hashem. Ein Chachma Vein Tfun Vein Tzil Neged Hashem. That we don't, even if a person has an embarrassing situation, it's a question of covered abrios, of personal dignity. We can't be over averis. We can't violate the halacha for that. One example the Gemara brings is a kilayim. If a person finds kilayim, he has to take it off, even in the middle of the street, where he'll be embarrassed, he'll be half-dressed or undressed in the middle of the street. Doesn't matter, kilayim is an avera. Once he's aware of it, Ein Chachma Vein Tfun Vein Tzil Neged Hashem. Whenever there's Chil Hashem, we can't worry about covered of ordinary people. The Gemara has all kinds of kashas. The Gemara has various distinctions. The Gemara says, for drabanans, we can be mekel. For a drabanan, we say that covered abrius is doche, a mitzvah drabanan. Later, the Gemara says, even for a deraisa, if it's b'shei valtase, if it's passive, we also say covered abrius, but for a mitzvah, say, deraisa, wearing kilayim, knowingly wearing kilayim, is considered a kumvase, and it's deraisa, so you have to take it off, and we don't care about covered abrius. The Achronim bring a machlokas, the Rambam and the Rosh. If you see someone else wearing kilayim and he doesn't know about it, there's a question of the Girsa in the Gemara. Our Girsa is that the heroic kilayim. Our Girsa in the Gemara is that the motzi kilayim bebigdo. Some have the Girsa kilayim on chavero. The Rambam says even if it's on chavero, you have to take it off. The Rosh disagrees. The Rosh says that if your friend is wearing kilayim and he doesn't know about it, he's considered, since he's shogig, he's considered sheval tasa. And you do know about it, but you're certainly sheval tasa. You're just sitting there and not telling him. So then you wouldn't have to take it off only if you know about it, or if your friend, only if you're wearing it yourself, or if your friend knows about it. But the Rambam disagrees. The Rambam says even if your friend is a shogig, it's still considered kumvaseh, and you have to take it off. Now the Yehuda takes this derives a major principle from this. Let's say you know that someone else is doing an avera b'shogig. He himself does not know, but you have information that if you told him, he would have to stop, but he would be very embarrassed. He says, is that kumvaseh or sheval tasya? That's the machlokes between the Rambam and the Rosh. He was talking about a case of a person who knew a woman had been unfaithful to her husband, and the husband didn't know about it. Should he tell the husband? It would be a tremendous covered abrius. It would be a tremendous shame, humiliation for him. He's a shogeg. So the Yehuda says it would be a machlokes, Rambam and the Rosh, that the Rambam would say you have to tell him because he's doing an avera. The Rosh would say you don't have to tell him. This is a question that's been discussed heavily for hundreds of years by the poskim. But the Yehuda argues that it would be a machlokes, Rambam and the Rosh. He says you can argue that the Iker lahalacha is like the Rosh, Kedai Rosh Lismachalav, Ramal Bask is like the Rosh. He has other reasons why, since it'll be an ongoing problem. It's not just a one-off event, it'll be an ongoing problem. It can't be makel even according to the Rosh. Hakalpanim, this is a major machlokes rishonim. It applies also possibly to an Erev situation. If someone's carrying when the Erev is down, he doesn't know. If there's a covered abrius issue, there'll be some kind of humiliation, some kind of shame if he has to stop. If you can have a case of covered abrius, there would be an issue of this machlokes, Rambam and the Rosh. The Gemara goes on. The Gemara says about Ashos Aveda, V'Hisalamta. The Gemara darshans that normally you're not supposed to be misalim, you're not supposed to ignore and walk right by an Aveda, lost property, but Pamim Mishatim misalim, sometimes you're allowed to. The one example is Zakeh Vein Lefi Chvodo, that if it would be beneath your dignity to stop and deal with some kind of Aveda, people used to take themselves seriously, and it was considered not distinguished and uncouth to take care of this property in the street. So if you wouldn't do it for yourself, the post can say that's a standard. You don't do it for someone else. You don't have to do it for someone else's Aveda either. Some posts can say that's only the covered of covered Torah, a person's a Talmud Chacham. But lahalacha, the Ritva says that, but lahalacha, we don't pass it like that. Lahalacha, Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Medayik from the Rambam, and Drish's Medayik from the Rambam, we pass it, it's either Chacham or Zakin Mechubad. Anybody who's distinguished, who would be embarrassing for him to deal with the property, is patur from dealing with Aveda. Not just because you're lazy. The Shulchan Aruch Harav explains you just don't want to do it yourself. You can't be bothered. You're just not in the mood to deal with it. You'd say I'd rather pay $10 than schlep a heavy object. That might not be a ptur. That's not a ptur. But if it's because of it's embarrassing, even if it's not covered at Torah, then you're patur from returning an Aveda. Nevertheless, the halacha is someone who is holech b'derech hatov v'yashar, someone who wants to do the right thing, wants to do a f'nimashur sedin, should return the Aveda, even though it's not l'fi chvodo, and we don't worry about his covered at Torah either. That's how we pass it. There's a very provocative, controversial comment of Rosh Kluger. He says that the same Torah of Zaken Ve'en L'fi Chvodo, that it's beneath my dignity to deal with an Aveda, applies to saving somebody's life. One of the sources the Gemara brings for Avedas Gufo, the mechuyev to step in and save somebody's life, is from the pasuk of Hashivos Salo, that a Shavas Aveda extends to saving a person's person, saving his life. So he argues that the same Torah of his Salamta, that if it's not L'fi Chvodo, if it's beneath your dignity to jump into the river and deal with him, you would be patur from saving somebody's life. That sounds very counterintuitive, given what we know of the great value the Torah places on saving lives. Indeed, many later Achronim who followed him thought that this is out of the question, this is completely untenable. Klechemda, Igros Moshe, Tzitz Eliezer, brings Rav Yashav held this way, that they don't accept this chiddush of Rav Shlomo Kluger. The Gemara goes on in Daf Chaf. The Gemara also discussing Kavod Abrias, related topics. The Gemara brings a story of Rav Adam Arava as an example of the great Mesiras Nefesh that earlier generations had. He saw a woman dressed in a certain garment, and he thought she was Jewish, and it wasn't appropriate. He tore it off her, kare, he ripped it off. Then he found out she was not Jewish. They made him pay 400 zuz. So he asked her, what's your name? She said her name was Masun. So he made a pun, a play on words. He said, Masun, Masun. I would have been more patient. I would have, you cost me 400 zuz. My impetuosity cost me 400 zuz. The Rambam, we mentioned before, the Rambam brings a halacha that if you see someone wearing kalayim, you tear it off. The Gemara just says, poshta, you take it off. The Rambam says, koro, you tear it off. Because the Mishnah says, his source is this Gemara. This Gemara says he tore it off. It turned out she was not Jewish. The whole thing was a mistake. But in principle, that you could tear it off if necessary to stop an avera from being done. You can even tear it off. That's what you see based on the Gemara. A number of 20th century poskim discuss, if you see someone else doing an avera, is that indeed the halacha? Can you grab something away? Can you destroy his property? Rav Moshe Sternbuch discusses, can someone destroy his parents' television? Rav Yosef Chaim Zanefeld discusses people bring newspapers into the Beis Medrash, which apparently then there were sources of machlokas and Bittul Torah at least. The Rav Avram Weinfeld in Lev Avram talks about a school that was serving the students Chalav Stam, not Chalav Yisrael. Someone spilled out the milk as a protest. They discuss whether these types of acts of destroying property to stop someone from doing what you believe at least is an avera, are you allowed to do that? So, and they all bring this Gemara as a major source. The Rav Yosef Chaim Zanefeld says, on the one hand, from Masun, you see that you can do it. On the other hand, he says you have to pay for it. The Rav Weinfeld, on the other hand, says that you don't have to pay for it. He says that, or at least he has a long tshuva, but at least his initial approach from this Gemara is that the Gemara says he had to pay, but only because she wasn't Jewish. He said, Al Pidin, had she been Jewish, had it been correct, he wouldn't have had to pay. Now he's a mutter, you wouldn't even have to pay. Rav Sternbuch brings this Gemara also that the Gemara does say that it's Chasidic Hamai, the early Chasidim used to do this. Rachel stole the Trofim, according to Rachel stole her father's humanoid dolls, which some Midrashim say it was to stop him from worshiping idols. Nevertheless, he says, on the other hand, we saw what happened to Rav Ada Barava, he had to pay, and Rachel also, she wound up, according to the Midrash, she was cursed by Yaakov. Yaakov didn't know, but she was cursed and she died for it. So we have to be very careful before you do this. He says, you really need to ask a she'elas chacham, you really have to decide whether it's the right thing or not, even if in principle it's right. Is that really the best way to accomplish your goal of increasing Kvod Shemayim and minimizing Averis? And it's not, don't be so quick to do such a thing. Gemara Daf Chaf later discusses the question of women of Adam and Ketanim. The Gemara says, from certain mitzvahs, women are exempt from mitzvahs of Kriya Shema, of Tefillin. However, they are chayavos, they're obligated in Tefillah and davening, mezuzah, Berach Samazon. The Gemara says, why Tefillah? So there are different girsos in the Gemara. Our girsa is Rachminin, who Tefillah, a person asks for Rachmanis from Hashem, for help from Hashem. women need that too, therefore women have to daven. The Rambam explains that tefillah midaraisa has no zman and no form, no nusach, you just daven whatever you want. All the details, the fixed format, and the zmanim are all midrabanan. The Rambam says that's why women are chayavas, not like Argamar, which seems to say they're chayavas because of Rachmi. The Rambam says they're chayav because, he had a different gears in the Gemara perhaps, but the Rambam says you're chayav because they are not zman grama, because midaraisa, the obligation of tefillah, is not zman grama. The Magen Avraham says that according to the Rambam, that the chiyuv is, there's no special svar of Rachman. The chiyuv of women is only because the midaraisa is not as man grama, but on the drabanan aspect of fixed manim, they're not chayavas, because that is man grama. That's why women don't have to daven, he says, shachris and marav. They just have to daven some free-form tefillah sometime during the day. They can say, Hashem, please help me. Hashem, please help me be successful. Please help me with my children. Please help me with my job, whatever it is. All that is fine. That's the sheet of the Magen Avraham. That's what he said. That's why women in his time, the minhag in his time was women didn't daven. That's why, because they go like the Rambam. And according to the Rambam, the chiyuv of women is only midaraisa, not on the zmanim and the fixed details, midrabanan. Many other poskim, maybe most poskim, disagree. They say in principle, first of all, many Rishonim disagree with the Rambam. Many Rishonim say that the Gemara is talking about tefillah drabanan. That's when it says they're chayavas. Even on the fixed tefillah, some say there is no tefillah midaraisa. The entire Gemara is talking about tefillah midrabanan, and still they're obligated to say tefillah. Even according to the Rambam, some say that they're chayavas on the daraisa and on the drabanan. So many poskim, including the Mishnah Berurah, Shulchan Aruch Harav, and many others say that in principle women are chayavos and shachris and mincha. Not marav, the Mishnah Berurah says, because marav is a rishus, as we saw elsewhere in the Masechta, and it's only rishus, even though men accepted it, women didn't necessarily accept it, but shachris and mincha, many poskim, perhaps most poskim, say in principle they're chayavos. On the other hand, the minhag still is that many women do not daven, and contemporary poskim have come up with all kinds of explanations for why. Some say osi mitzvah patrim mitzvah, they're busy with mitzvahs of taking care of their family. Some say ones, they just can't, they're so busy with other things that they can't. Some say they're tarud, they have so much on their minds with the household. We find, again, elsewhere in the Masechta, certain cases of people who are tarud, they just came back from a trip, their mind isn't clear, they can't daven. We find a variety of other reasons, but again, in principle, the Ikra Din, most poskim say that women should be chayavos in tefillah. Musaf Mishnah Berurah brings is machlokes, the tzlach says Pturos, the Magen Giborim says chayavos. The Gemara brings also, later in Amud Beis, Chaf Amud Beis, the Gemara says that Nashim are chayavos and Kiddush Hayom Dvar Torah. Women are obligated to hear Kiddush also midrabanan, not just midrabanan. The Gemara goes back and forth on that, but the maskana is they're chayavos in Kiddush, even though it's man grama, but it's Zachar v'Shamar tukush to the Losa says of Shabbos. Couple of possible nafkaminas to that, to Kiddush being deraisa for women. First of all, the Mishnah Berurah brings that a katan cannot be motzi an isha. A katan, even if he's a giel chinuch, has a mitzvah drabanan, but the isha has a chiyu of midaraisa. A mitzvah drabanan can't exempt the mitzvah deraisa. Even if the katan is 13, being 13 is not enough. We require certain physical signs of puberty, of maturation. Even though we normally rely on someone being 13 to count for a minyan, we assume he has those simanim, but for mitzvah deraisa, we don't rely on that. For kiddush, you don't rely on that. You have to establish that he has a beard, or that he shaves, or that he has some, that he is a gadol with a certainty required for a deraisa. Another issue is, Rikveger, the tzlach talk about, is that if a man daven marav and shul, the man may have already been yotzei kiddush midaraisa. You don't need the kos midaraisa. So according to many poskim at least, when a person said marav and shul with the bracha of Shabbos, he was already yotzei kiddush midaraisa. The woman, if she has not daven marav, may not have been yotzei midaraisa. So once again, the man is still obligated to say kiddush al kos, but the man's obligation is only midrabanan. Someone who has an obligation with drabanan cannot be motzi someone whose obligation is midaraisa. Therefore, Rikreger and the tzlach both are not sure that a man in such a case could be motzi a woman, since he's already davened and she has not been yotzei kiddush midaraisa.